Hello everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel where we tackle the monster manuals and draw fan art of our take on the exciting, frightening, and bizarre creatures of the D&D universe. All tutorials in this series are absolutely free, and all techniques shown are of as much value as the effort you put in. Let's get started. Today we're moving along to the next creature in our CR0 tier, and it just so happens to be the Avatar of Death. An Avatar of Death is an aspect of death itself, haunting the player who summoned it, purposefully or accidentally, until it has acquired its target's soul. The Avatar of Death is chilling and can slay an entire unprepared party. Creative solutions are more than necessary in this case. So why is this creature in the challenge rank 0? Well, it turns out the Avatar of Death is in that tier by means of simulating the level and health of the summoner who beckoned it forth, meaning a level 10 player could summon a level 10 Avatar of Death. So the CR0 is merely there to leave the details modular. And here I thought we'd be drawing unicorn rabbits and badgers at this level, so let's get down to it. How does one best this incorporeal spirit? With stats as high as this baddie, it's going to take a lot more than pummeling and punches. Luckily for players with an advantage in history checks, there are quite a number of stories told through time in which a protagonist has battled against the Avatar of Death in a game of wits, the winner of which would get to keep the wagered soul. A painting by Swedish artist Albertus Pictor of the late 15th century depicts a man and skeleton engaged in a game of chess, presumably as a nod to how knights of the time had gambled with death on various occasions to keep their life. Atop the painting reads a ribbon with the words, "I checkmate thee." So we're going to draw a scene in which our player characters challenge the Avatar of Death to a game of chess in order to retain possession of their soul. Now I have my reference picture pulled up. It's a bit of a compilation of various things, which is scenes from people playing chess, a little bit of pictures of Grim Reaper, a superimposed hand with a chess piece in it. I can upload the picture later on to show you my mishmash of reference that I put together to make this pose. As I've said in a previous video, not everything comes 100% from imagination. We can have the concept in our head as artists, but putting everything together is as much as a challenge as drawing the thing itself. So I'm gonna go ahead and start with drawing this pose roughly to go ahead and show you what I'm going to be achieving here. So first I'm going to start with vague shapes and just drawing my character's head. I'm going to do that cross technique to get a general idea of where death is going to be looking. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a bit of a gesture line to kind of draw out where the body is going to be for this. Here I'm drawing a primitive rib cage. Primitive hips. And then it's not 100% necessary to draw the entire body in certain poses that are going to be obscured by other elements of the scene. In this one, I plan to have a chessboard right around this area, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that. And this chessboard is going to overlap our Avatar of Death's legs, so we don't need to go ahead and draw all of that in excruciating detail. But I can go ahead and draw more of where this body figure should be to at least get a rough idea of where the legs and thighs need to be going. Now, an Avatar of Death is mostly covered in robes and is an incorporeal spirit, so it's not going to need a lot of weight to the body, but it just helps to kind of get the overall form of how things are going to be going. So now I have my Avatar of Death at its table. I'm going to go ahead and draw a chair behind it. And again, I'm just sticking to loose shapes. Nothing that's going to be 100% committed to. There's probably going to be a lot of erasing in just a moment. I'm drawing just very lightly to get an idea of where everything's going to be placed. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and time lapse this part. Okay, so resuming here, I'm going to point out a couple things. Most people like to draw when they're doing scenes, the vanishing points and perspective points. But for this instance, it's just going to be a kind of a quick sketch and something that's not going to need 100% professional level vanishing points and perspective lines. So there's going to be a bit of fudging, I guess you could say, here and there. But for the most part, it's going to get the idea across very well, in my opinion, regardless of all those technical details. So in this case, you can see I drew a circle here to indicate where the shoulder goes, as well as right here. And then I also have where the elbow is. Same for this one. His elbow is going to be resting on the table. How uncouth of death. As well as his hand is going to be in his lap or near his lap. So, had I have been drawing a full pose in which death is going to be seen in 100%, full glory, I would have drawn another circle where his hands would be, a bit more for the rib cage, more for the thighs, where the thigh would be a circle as well to kind of indicate where the hips would be, and as well as the thickness of the hip itself. And with just these basic shapes, this primitive rib cage, primitive hips, and the circles, you can get kind of a mannequin skeleton type of figure that can handle the job very well of showing what the pose is supposed to be. So again, you can already see the pose kind of coming along with just this as it is by itself, and this can be a very helpful draft into figuring out where everything's going to end up. So I'm going to go ahead and time lapse again just to start getting more details into here. So when drawing a skeleton, anatomy once again is very important in figuring out how to exaggerate the right features and how to give the impression that something is I guess bony in nature. So looking a bit closer here in the cheekbones, I have it jutting out just slightly, and I have it start to cave in a bit before it reaches the eye socket, to which I have it extend once more when it comes across the brow. You see just a hint of where the rest of the top of the skull would be behind this figure, as well as the bottom of the chin has a bit more of a definition there, and the jaw and the cheekbone kind of follows the same line as the other side. And with just this simple outline of the forms, you can already see a skeletal shape taking place with almost minimal effort. And again, reducing things to these primitive shapes is what's going to really help convey an idea and allow you to explore more of the exaggerations of what you're trying to go for, as well as what details you want to highlight. For cloths and fabrics, especially since this entire cloak here drapes over his whole figure, long flowing lines are your best friend. So had the Avatar of Death been wearing, say, a handkerchief or a scarf, it'd be much easier to just draw short, brief strokes with the folds of the clothes. But since this is a robe, pretty much every line we're going to see is going to flow straight from the top of its outline all the way down to the bottom of where a limb ends or where the body ends. So going back into time lapse, I'm going to start cleaning up this figure a bit more to get into the details. So just a moment I want to point out, you may have noticed I turned my entire canvas a bit to the side when I was drawing here. That's something I kind of want to talk about a little bit. When drawing, our hand kind of will be able to get stuck in certain motions. So for example, it's very easy to move the entire wrist across in one straight line regardless of whatever area you're facing. So when pulling in with curves, you can find yourself getting messed up a bit on where the curve placement should be. So if it works better to turn the canvas, you can kind of get that natural curve going. That's a lot easier to do going away from the body, whereas going towards the body might cause some issue. So that's why I was doing that little thing there. Okay, so here I want to explain what I'm going to do with the hands. For hands, it's best to start with, again, basic shapes to figure out, where the suggestion of fingers are going to go. For me, I just stick to this mitten and glove technique, is what I call it, where I just draw a circle to indicate where the palm is, and the biggest fingers, which is the thumb, forefinger, middle finger, are going to be the ones that have the most detail in them. So that's going to be easy for me to immediately figure out where this hand's going to be posing its fingers. And then from that point, I start to break it down into more complex angles and individual fingers, individual bones, palm lines, etc. For hands, I almost always have some sort of reference pulled up, simply because the hand has so many moving pieces into it, as well as so many bones and mini bones and sub bones and connectings and joints, that it's going to be a bit of a chore unless you're extremely well versed with the anatomy of the hand to do this all from memory. But again, practice makes perfect. Some of you might actually be very talented at putting those things together. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to allow you to see what I did with the hand. Let's see. For hands, sorry, my camera's just a little bit blurry. For hands, the various bones in the middle often are so close together, so it's one of those things that you might be able to fudge just a little bit, mostly because there's so much busyness going on in the middle of the pose, so you can kind of suggest where these bones are going to be, where things are going to be. It's another thing, as I said before, learning how to hide your mistakes better. So one thing I want to point out real quick is that in my reference picture for this face of my Grim Reaper type of creature, there is a lot of black between the cloak. However, being that the chest piece that this Grim Reaper is holding is black, I want to leave a little bit of white space here to distinguish the difference between where these interior of the cloak is and where the piece is. So I'm going to very carefully, only just barely color in or shade in the chest piece, so much that you can tell that this is a black piece, but it's not going to blend in too much with the rest of the figure. And I'm also going to leave a bit of white space between the skull, the finger, and the chest piece, so that way it doesn't actually make things too messy to read. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up right here and explain a bit of what I'm doing. So rather than draw all the extreme detail of these chess pieces, I'm just suggesting the kind of form that they're supposed to represent. To focus on such small details when the overall focus of the piece is the avatar of death would be a bit of a chore. So simply just suggesting the forms of what's supposed to be there is actually going to help get this along a lot quicker. Also, it's a matter of preference. If it's therapeutic for you to draw all the little details, then by all means do so. But I am just about finished with this piece. Looking at my reference picture, I'm not entirely sure what's going on with the side of the board past this corner. So forgive me if you look at this and you're a chess player and it doesn't quite make sense in this corner. I'm just working with what I can see. So I believe there's a horse up here, so this horse will be missing. Which means... okay. And then from here we can fill in some blanks in the squares and just kind of give that some detail. Alright, and there you have it. The rest of the details will be up to preference and up to taste. Oops, I forgot one last piece, but I'll draw that as I'm talking. So, you know, maybe in this scene you want to have Death have a bit of adornments or some jewelries or some sort of, you know, markings on the skull, or perhaps the chessboard will be something more fancy, like with torches and headless horsemen or something of interest that can be a bit of flavor for creativity. This is just something relatively basic to kind of show the mood I'm trying to convey here. For the chair, I did something simple, something typical where you have skulls onto a throne, but I can't imagine it's going to be good for back support in any way, but aesthetically it looks pretty good. So here's the end of the second episode with our creature number 2, Avatar of Death. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for next time, and I hope you learned a lot.